This is UFC Featherweight Julian Erosa, and welcome to the Marcus Deegan Show.
The Marcus Deegan Show. What's the story, guys? Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Marcus Deegan, shooting from the beautiful Sticky Paws Studios here in Las Vegas, Nevada, Sin City, the place of bright lights and world title fights. Damn, it's good to be back in the studio. Haven't seen you guys for a while. As a matter of fact, I think it's been about 12 months since I jumped in the studio, and I just want to share my gratitude to everyone that helped make this possible. John Orlando and the crew here at Sticky Paws, I'm forever in your debt because I'm in my home place right now, so I'm very happy to be here. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. We got another pumping episode for you today. This the guy that I'm going to introduce you to right now, you may have just seen him before. We spoke on Zoom maybe about a year ago. As a matter of fact, I was really happy that I got to speak to him because I was in a pretty bad place at that time in my life. Jumped on the Zoom with these UFC fighters, and it always makes you feel better. Well, today we have got him in the studio. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome to the Marcus Deegan Show, Daddy Longknees himself, Mr. Julian Erosa. What's the story, brother?
Thank you so much for having me on, Marcus. Just got done training and took the 4-minute drive over here to come see you and talk with you. And it's been, like you said, it's been a year, so it's nice to catch up with you again.
So why is it that people in the public think that these UFC fighters are these mad, angry killers? But when you sit down and talk to someone like you, I remember from our last conversation, you're just such a humble, nice guy. Do you think being humble helps you be a killer?
Yeah, you have to be. I think you can't fight with emotion. When you fight with emotion, it can kind of, cloud your vision, and you can lose that way. I think we're just playing a sport, or we're playing a game in a sense. People always ask me, do you got to get upset? Do you have to, get mad at your opponent to have like a little bit of an edge? But I feel like that is the opposite of it. You want to be as clear, cool, calm, and collected as possible, and I feel like that's when you perform your best.
So do you think that, like, going into, even if you're in a street fight, if you're really angry or if you're really upset, it's not going to go your way. It's just better to be calm and nice and flowy.
Well, yeah. I mean, just like any other sport, if you go out there and you become emotional, you can really be detrimental to yourself.
But why? What does that do? Does it make your heart go faster so you run out of cardio? Like, what does it actually do if you're angry?
I think there's a bunch of variables, but I think the most important one is that when we're training, we're not emotional. So like when I'm sparring guys, I'm not emotional. I'm just trying to figure out how to beat them, and try to figure out how I can work, what I'm good at and work my skill sets. So I'm trying to be smart, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing in the gym. So if I go into a fight and I become emotional, it's something I'm not used to. So one of the big ones is that it could probably drain your gas tank a bit more. And I think you see that all the time happen. You see guys in the UFC, even guys that I've trained with, I'm like, man, these guys are, have really good cardio, and you see them gas after a round, like one round, and you're like, these guys are professional athletes. Why are they so tired? I see them training day in and day out, and he can go round after round in the gym, and it's just a different situation. So if you're adding the emotion, I think it can definitely torch your gas tank a bit.
I think civilians like us and the people that watch and listen to this and the people that watch your sport don't really know the true meaning of what it is to be a UFC athlete. They don't know the process of it, hence the reason why a lot of them like to talk a lot of shit online, because they don't really. I mean, I'll tell you, if anyone is, the trolls and stuff that do, I don't want to go on about trolls because everyone's got them, but if you strap on a pair of gloves and go and do 3 weeks worth of kickboxing training and see if you'll ever talk shit about another athlete again, because you won't. Recently I just started training myself, recently in the last year or so, I started training myself, and I thought I knew everything about it. I've talked to all the fighters. I've watched it religiously for years and years and years. Mate, I was a newborn baby in there. I was a fetus in there. I had zero idea. Until you actually get punched in the face and feels what it feels like to get punched in the face, you've got no idea.
Yeah.
Speaking of getting punched in the face, you do that really well. When's your next fight?
I was hoping to get something, lined up for sometime in the fall. Still haven't got anything lined up, but I've been helping a lot of guys out with their camps, so I've been in shape, and I'm kind of one of those guys that tries to stay in shape throughout the year. So if it is a short notice fight, I can take it and feel pretty confident that my cardio is intact, that my sparring sessions have been good, and I try to help a lot of these guys out in the gym as well that are getting ready for for their fight. So if I'm holding a candle to them, with the cardio, with the gas tank, and with the sparring sessions and stuff, then I know that I can step up even on a short notice and do well in a fight. So I'm hoping within the next couple of weeks I'll have some news, and then we could probably get a fight at least by November. I would, I'm really looking forward to something like that.
So how long has it been since the last time you fought?
Oh man, it's been I want to say like 6 months. I think it's been about 6 months.
Just refresh everybody's memory who it was that you fought and the result.
I fought Fernando Padilla.
Yeah, that's right.
Man, I can't remember exactly the date. But yeah, that fight was if you watch that fight, he kind of clipped me early in the fight. We got into a little bit of a wrestling scramble, and I got back to my feet, and then he clipped me again. But I was completely aware of what's going on, and I felt like it was a bit early of a stoppage by Chris Tione. After the fight, he kind of came back to, and he kind of like a roundabout way apologized. Didn't necessarily apologize for the exact decision, because I feel like if he did that, then he'd feel like he was wrong. But I felt like a lot of people felt that fight was stopped early. But I think back about it, and it's one of those things that I put myself in that position for something like that to happen. So it's kind of my own fault, regardless of if the ref stepped in too early or not. I need to be more aware of those things and not put myself in the situation where it could be stopped too early.
So answer me this question: why is it? Do world title fights? Do the refs let it go a little bit longer than they normally do? Because, example, what happened with Izzy and Sean Strickland in the first round, where Izzy got dropped, would that have normally been a stoppage, do you think? Because I counted around 22 punches without any defense apart from maybe trying to turn his back. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, a good example is not only title fights, but like main events too. So the night that I fought Fernando Padilla, the main event was Song Yadong versus Ricky Simone. And I like Ricky Simone, and I was rooting for him in that fight. But in their fight, he ended up losing his fight, got TKO'd. But he actually got hurt a handful of times in that fight, and the ref let it go. And it was like I don't care if you're a main event, you're fighting for a title. We're all doing the same thing. We all have the same ability to come back from fights. A lot of my biggest wins in the UFC, I got hurt in. Sean Woodson, when I fought him on a few days' notice, he dropped me in the third round before I choked him out. When I fought Charles Jourdain dropped me before I subbed him as well. Nate Landwehr dropped me before I knocked him out. Like, some of my best wins in the UFC were coming off of times in the cage where I got hurt and came back from that. So, I feel like all the fighters just want to be left to fight. Obviously we got to have somebody in there protecting us, but as a fighter, I don't want you to stop the fight until I'm unconscious. If you watch that fight back with Fernando Padilla, the second time he kind of half dropped me, I dropped to my knee, popped to my feet, and was running away and was intelligently defending myself. And Chris Tione stepped in a bit early, and I think he was a bit biased because I got dropped a few seconds before that. And I think he was just thinking, if it happens again, I'm stepping in regardless. And so instead of seeing how I got dropped the second time, he just stepped in instead of kind of analyzing it. And I think it does happen a bit more on the undercard versus, main events or title fights as well.
So you probably know a little bit more, but you're not a referee, but you know a little bit more about this than I do. So I'm sure everyone doesn't know about it either. If a referee is reffing a fight that they know the fighter has a good chin and that they know he can get dropped and come back really easy, do you think there's a little bit of leeway there from the referee's point of view? Like, he's like, okay, I know Julian, I know he's got a hard chin and you can crack him, he might go down, but he always gets back up. Is that a factor? Do they know that, or are they just going on what happens right there and then?
I really think it comes down to what ref you have. Right. It's all about consistency too. Like, I don't care if you're going to be one of the refs that stops fights early, run it across the board like that. Like, something that bothers me sometimes is I don't want to specifically say exactly which refs it could be, but sometimes you watch a ref and he'll stop a fight too early, and then you see the same guy stop a fight too late, and you're like, where's the consistency? Yeah, and it's hard because refs are humans too, right? Like, so they're going to make errors, they're going to do human errors, and they're not going to be perfect all the way through, but just be consistent, and I think what happens too is some refs have gotten flack from stopping fights too late, so they'd rather stop them early, and because you're not really going to get as much flack stopping a fight early versus stopping it late, because if you stop it late, you're taking guys' brain cells, you're taking their careers from them. Maybe obviously you can take careers away from stopping fights early, and they can be losing fights because of that, and not giving them the chance. But if you stop a fight too late, I think it's a bit worse than stopping it too early. But I just feel like there needs to be consistency across.
Who was
the
that
board.
ref from back in the day that just used to let it go and go? And,
Yamasaki.
Yeah,
Yamasaki.
Dana
yeah.
couldn't stand him,
Yeah.
and sometimes I'll be sitting there watching it, going, "What are you doing?" Like
Yeah.
it's it kind of takes your breath away a little bit,
Yeah.
Bennett. Does that happen when you're watching one of your buddies fight? Do you get emotionally caught up in when they're fighting as well? Like, do you actually sit there and watch it? And what emotion do you have when you're watching one of your bros fight?
I have more emotion and I get more tied up into it than even my own fights because I can't do nothing about it. If I'm in there fighting, I can do something about it. So if
Yeah.
something's not going my way, I can physically do something about it. If my buddy's in there fighting, I can't physically do anything about it. I can tell him what to do, but I can't step in there and help him out. He's got to figure it out himself. So when you watch a teammate fight like that, you kind of just gotta let them, take control and just hope for the best.
Yeah.
Hope that they are gonna do what we've been training and do what he needs to do to get out there with a win. But it's definitely a bit more emotionally investing.
Do you get nervous when you watch him fight, like that nervous feeling in the stomach?
yeah,
do you get
yeah.
that before you fight?
No.
You do not get nervous at all.
I get a different feeling. I get that kind of the butterflies in the stomach feeling with my buddies going fight, and I get a bit more.
Like an adrenaline kind of like a.
I don't know. I get a little. It's such a weird thing because like you gotta fight that feeling. You gotta fight because you don't want to have that weird like I feel like when you get the butterfly feeling in your stomach, you feel a little weak. Your legs get a little shaky.
Yes.
Things like that.
Hands are sweaty. You got to take a shit.
Yes, exactly. So I feel like you gotta like fight those feelings a bit more, and I think it just that comes with experience. Like I've been fighting for a long time, and I've done it so many times that when I first started fighting, it was pretty similar to that. I would have the same kind of feeling as watching one of my buddies fight as compared to when I fought, but now it's a little different because I have a bit more experience. So like.
Yeah.
You want to be as cool, calm, and collected as possible. You want to be emotionless, kind of. So, and it just takes experience.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the mindset of a fighter. You've got to be able to switch those emotions on and off. Obviously, we just had UFC 293 in Australia last weekend. Obviously, I was very homesick. Laura Sanko made her pay-per-view debut. I thought she did an incredible job. I mentioned that earlier on. After watching those fights in Australia, is that something that you can't wait to do? Go to like somewhere like Australia and perform on a huge, big arena like that? Is that
Yeah.
a goal, or it doesn't matter where you fight?
I mean, honestly, for me, it doesn't really.
Is it more of a hassle having to fucking fly to Australia and then come back instead of just going to the Apex?
for sure. I've been lucky that I haven't had to go to like out of the country to fight in the UFC. I did Cage Warriors when I fought Paddy Pimblett back in the day.
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah, I've been pretty lucky that most of my fights, have been in the States, and then more often than not, I fight at the Apex. So it's in our backyard. It's literally right here. So it makes it really easy for me. I can wake up at my own house, drink a cup of coffee on my couch the day I'm fighting. So
Yeah.
it kind of just brings you back and then reminds you why you're doing these things. But also, like, when I fought T-Mobile, even though it was in my backyard, it was nice to be in front of everybody in a big arena. Like, the T-Mobile arena is amazing. And there's something about that, like, of that experience that you get. It's almost like watching fights on TV versus watching fights in person. Like, even though you might not be able to see it the best, I mean, the best seat in the house is always kind of at your house because you can see everything perfectly. But there's something about seeing fights live or seeing a basketball game or something live that it's unexplainable. But it's kind of the same feeling that you get fighting in the Apex where there's not like a huge crowd versus fighting in a big arena like in Sydney or
Abu Dhabi or somewhere like that. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, it's funny, when I watch the fights live and you don't hear the commentary, it's a lot different than when you're sitting at home watching the commentary. Preferably, I rather it with the commentary because I like to hear what the commentators are saying. But so after, obviously, you watch the UFC every time it's on.
Yeah, most often than not.
And do you watch other promotions as well, like Cage Warriors and PFL and boxing and stuff
I
like that?
watch PFL, Bellator, and mostly because like I train with guys that fight.
Yeah.
So I'm watching those guys and mostly when I'm watching other organizations, it's those guys that are fighting that I know. So I don't watch. I'm not like a diehard. Bellator fan or a diehard PFL fan, but if I have guys that are fighting on those cards or guys that I've trained with or guys that I know personally, I like to watch those fights, obviously. I can't remember what fights it was. It was a smaller promotion. I can't remember what it was, but I tuned in on that. I wanted to watch it. Oh, it was the Game Bread fights.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was the Game Bred fights over in Florida.
The bare knuckle MMA.
Yes, Maki Patola was fighting on there. Anthony Njokuani was fighting Jenkins, and I know both those guys, so I was really interested in watching that fight. I know Maki Patolo, and it's always good to watch those fights. And it was interesting too because it was bare knuckles, so it brings another element to the fights.
The thing about being an MMA journalist or a podcaster or whatever, you got to have a really good memory, especially when it comes to the UFC. Yeah. You got to remember weights, you got to remember dates, you got to remember UFC pay-per-view 293 or 2. For a guy like me who's a complete stoner that has zero memory, it's very, very difficult to try and remember all these things. And I used to print everything out and write everything down. But I think that it's better just to sit here and have a conversation and learn about it as we go. Like, I know a fair bit about the fight game. I wouldn't say I'm an expert on it, but I know enough to get me by. But you got to have a really good memory. It's like you're trying to remember something. It's like, fuck, what weight was he? Whose name is it? Yeah. So it's quite funny. So, but getting back to UFC 293, do you know Sean Strickland and do you know Israel Adesanya?
I don't know Izzy. I know Sean because he trains at Extreme, and that's where I train. I don't train one-on-one with Sean because we're two different weight classes, but we see each other in the gym, and you get to see each other spar and see each other train, and it's one of those things that like you see a guy like Sean, just a normal guy coming in and day out, and he's nothing special about the guy. He's just a normal guy, and he can go out there and do what he did this last weekend, and it really opens your eyes to all the possibilities that we all have. Sean was a normal guy, and just put the time, effort in, and the hard work in there, and now he's the world champion.
Isn't it unbelievable? I mean, he was not given a fighting chance, and to me, he had a Rocky moment.
Yeah.
Remember in Rocky 1 where Rocky knocked down Apollo like in the first round, and people never thought that Rocky had a chance. It was kind of a Rocky moment for me when I saw him drop Izzy. I just couldn't believe it. And then I think one of the most awesome viral clips that are going around is the last 5 seconds of the fight.
Yes.
What happened? Can you explain to me what happened to his mind? Like, what was happening? What was he thinking then? When he was yelling at Izzy, fucking come on. What was happening then?
Well, I think when you're in a fight, regardless of how you feel the fight's going, you're tuned in, right? You're just like, you're focused, you're hyper-focused on, continuing what you're doing if it's going good. I think what happened was he finally got to the point where he was realizing that he's winning this fight. Like, this fight's like, he's like a few seconds away from winning this fight.
And he knew it, right?
Yeah, he knew it. And so, and then everybody knew it, even Izzy knew it. But I think that's what was going on. He was finally realizing in the fight that he was about to be the world champion. And there's basically a less than 1% chance that he was going to lose that fight from those last 20 seconds. So I think he was just getting excited, and he wanted to kind of showcase, what he's known for, kind of talking shit in the cage and just being a man's man and going there, and scream a little bit and want to, fist fight a guy. Yeah.
I mean, it's just now. Do you think the focus is on Izzy had a bad night or how good Sean fought?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, you got guys that are Izzy fans that are like, well, I think he was just, there's a lot of pressure on a guy who's got, so many fights, trying to retain his title so many times. The pressure can be, monumental. He's on the cover of the new game. You got so much going for him, so there's a lot of pressure, and there is probably way more pressure on Izzy's shoulders than there was on Sean's because
Sean had nothing to lose, right?
Exactly.
Apart from the fight.
And there's something to be said about that. But also, I think one of the best styles against a guy that's kind of flashy like Izzy is a guy who has really clean, basic boxing. And that's what Sean's all about, is just really good, clean, basic boxing. And I think it takes away from the flash. And when you pressure somebody like who's really flashy like that, it's hard for them to get off with those big flashy moments when their back's against the cage. And literally 90%, 95% of the fight, his back was against the cage. So it's really hard to do the spinning stuff. It's really hard to do some of the high-level kicking that someone can do when their back's against the cage. And so a little bit of both of them. One had a good night versus one had a bad night. But I think it's just a good style matchup for Sean.
I mean, the distance between Sean and Izzy the whole fight was nothing more than a meter. And as you said, Izzy was on the heels. Sean was on the balls of his feet the whole time.
Yeah.
And I spoke about this the other day on a podcast. The way Sean was kind of feinting and kind of moving away from all of Izzy's punches and like Izzy couldn't even counter strike, and he's
Yeah.
known for his counter striking and his kicks. It was like he was in the Matrix or something. And Sean's face, and what kind of broke my heart a little bit, and Sean obviously has had a rough upbringing and a hard background. When he won the belt, it's like he wanted to cry, but he didn't know how.
Yeah,
It didn't. He's like, he didn't know how to cry.
Yeah.
And you'd think if you were going to cry, that'd be a moment where you were doing it. But I watched his face, and it's like I don't think he knows how to cry. So, but it was a great moment, and there was a bunch of great fights, and it made me homesick watching it. And what do you think's next? Do you think that Izzy deserves an instant rematch?
I mean, they always kind of do that, right? So, like, obviously, if you were the champion and you were such a dominant champion for so long, obviously, the trilogy he had with Potan, like that, the title switched hands a couple of times, but besides that trilogy he had with him, he was such a dominant champion that you kind of got to give him another shot at it. But I think they just like mixing it up. I think the UFC is starting to become a bit. It used to be like always immediate rematches for the previous champion, but I think they just like it feels like they want to mix things up a bit more, and I think that's one of the reasons why they were willing to let Sean hop in at number 6. I think he was like ranked six or whatever, but they were willing to let him hop in because he's like new blood. So I think that always, you have some of these trilogies and some of these even Moreno versus what's his name?
Cheeto.
No, Moreno versus the guy he fought a bunch of times. Real muscular dude. Figueiredo.
Oh yeah, Figueiredo.
It's like, they fought so many times where it was just like you're just like
we're gonna go for a fourth one. Yeah, I see what you mean.
It's just not very exciting.
No,
it
you're
gets
right.
to the point where you're like, I'm just tired of it. I've seen this. I feel like, and then those guys have had 25-minute fights. So it's like, well, actually, no, he finished him that one time he ran into choke. But and then also
by rear naked choke, the last one, and
And but it's just like, it just seems like you've watched it so many times where you're like, you just want new blood, even if it's a guy that's kind of down the ladder, it's just more exciting because it brings something different.
Yeah.
And even the whole like Sean O'Malley versus Aljo, it's like Sean O'Malley felt like he kind of jumped up a couple steps to fight Aljo. I feel like there could have been other guys. Obviously the whole Merab versus Aljo is like never gonna happen because they're best friends, and main training partners. So that was never gonna happen. I feel like Merab is the next guy that should be up, but I feel like Sean O'Malley was able to kind of jump the line a little bit, but I think it's also because the UFC likes a little bit of the new blood. They want to see these things.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. So if Izzy's going to get a rematch straight away, why isn't Aljo? Yeah, man, I kind of agree with you there. It kind of gets a little bit old after the third or fourth fight. Yeah,
and then that's what happens too, right? Like if they do an immediate rematch, then like, okay, what if Izzy wins? Okay, so if Izzy wins, then there's going to be a third fight, and it's like you just. You get tired of watching the same guys fight 1, 2, 3 times. The one times is great for us. We love that. Obviously, we want to see what would happen on a rematch as well. But if it goes the same way, obviously, then they'll never fight again. But if Izzy wins, then it's like then they got to fight again, and then it prolongs the guys that are 1, 2, 3, 4. All the other guys that are in between. The champ and the top 5. So.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I agree with you on that. Jumping back to your division though, who's the 145-pound GOAT in your eyes? Is it Alexander Volkanovski?
For sure. But there's a long list of them. There's generational GOATs throughout it. Volkanovski's now the GOAT, but Max Holloway was for a long time. Jose Aldo before him. And you have these guys that that are still considered the GOATs. You don't have to have one GOAT of a weight class. You can have multiple GOATs because these guys have had their time and they were so dominant at their time. At their peak performances that there's a time when guys fall off. I don't want to say fall off, but there's a time where there's kind of a handing of or a trading of the guard. With as of right now though, like Volkanovski for sure, and what really kind of tips my hat to him is the fact that he was able to go up to and fight Islam, who's been so dominant, or is such a dominant guy at 155.
He was until the Volkanovski fight.
Yeah, it was. It really showed a chink in his armor. I didn't think that Volkanovski won the fight, but I felt like it was a lot closer than a lot of people gave him credit for. I've rewatched that fight, and And people will argue that Volkanovski won that fight. I don't think he won that fight, but man, he made it a really, really close fight.
I think I'm a little bit biased because he's an Aussie,
sure.
and I'm an Aussie as well. So do you think that he should? I mean, pretty much. Who is there for him to fight in the 145? Do you think he's going to stay at or go back to 155 and go Islam again? Or should he stay at 145 and fight you, for example, for the title?
No, I mean, I know that even Aljo was saying that he would try to move up after he beat Sean. He was gonna. This was probably gonna be his 135 farewell fight, and then he was gonna go to 45 and maybe challenge like Volkanovski. So, obviously, if Aljo, dominated Sean, then yeah, that would have been a good fight to do. But I think with the whole Aljo situation, I think he just he's coming into a point of his life where maybe he doesn't know if he's going to really want to compete at that high level anymore.
Wow, the transition time in your life, right? The mid-30s. How old are you, Julian?
I'm 34 years old.
So you'll be going through that in the next couple of years too, mate.
Yeah, I mean, there's as you become older and more mature, things become different in your head. So, but I think for Volkanovski, I mean, I think just staying at 45 is good. I mean, they can always rematch, but like I said, it's like, nobody really likes to watch these, the rematch. I mean, rematches are cool. Like if it was a really good
trilogy
fight, But it's like, then that's what it becomes, because like if Volkanovski fights Islam and beats him, then it's like they got to be doing another fight. It's like I don't want to watch those guys fight 3 times.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind watching them fight again though, because it was a good fight, and I think he has a good shot of winning if he fights him again.
Just circulating back to Sean Strickland really quickly. I heard this morning, and I don't know how much of this is true because a lot of things fly around in this business. Brendan Schaub was saying that they never wanted Sean Strickland to be the champion. Reason being, obviously, because of, some of the controversial things that he says and the way he is and if he would be a good representation. However, Izzy had said, look, I'm going to finish him in the first. It's going to be it's easy. It's going to happen. Yeah. He sold it to Dana. Apparently Dana didn't want to really get it done, but they did it. And now the outcome is that Sean is now the champion. Does that happen a lot in the UFC when you're at a certain level? Are people favored?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's a private business, so like they're gonna do what they want to do.
Right.
It really comes down to what the brass wants to do for the UFC. It's not. I mean, obviously fans have a say in it as well, but at the bottom line, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. But I think with the whole Sean thing is like, the reason why Sean got that fight is because he's the guy who's down to do it. Like he was, like nobody wants to take on the champ on 5 weeks notice. I mean, it was like there were like 5 weeks before the fight. It was like he still didn't know if he was going to get the shot or not.
He didn't have his passport.
So yeah, he's just training, training every day, but he's just the guy that was willing to do it.
Yeah.
Because I bet you there was Duplessis was injured or whatever.
He's still injured, yeah.
So like he couldn't take the fight, but there's a lot of guys in between Sean at the time and the champ. Sean was ranked 6th, and there's other guys that probably got offered the fight that said no because they didn't want to take it on 5 weeks notice. Sean was like, fuck it, dog. Like, give it to me. I'll do it. And he went out there and did it. So you can't hate the guy for doing that. That's really what the sport should be about. I mean, regardless if you like the guy or not, that's what really inspires people about the sport is a guy like Sean can just be, working in the
best part about it.
Yeah, he could be working in the background and take a title shot at 5 weeks out in Australia and the guy's home turf, and go out there and get the job done the way he did and make it look easy. It's just, it inspires me because I see Sean on a daily basis. I see him in the gym, and he's just such a normal guy, and I like it too because he's a fan of mine. Like he always likes to watch me spar, and he's like, I love watching you fight, and he helps me, he gives me pointers on what I should be doing as well. So I really respect the guy, and I see him on a daily basis. So it's really nice when you see a guy in his position do what he did.
Do you ever get starstruck from any of these fighters? And starstruck's like an extreme word, but do you ever go like, fuck, that's blah, blah, blah?
Not anymore. I mean,
did you used to?
I used to when I first got in the UFC and I would see guys, I'm like, oh my God, that's this guy, that's that guy. What really gets me now is when a guy that I got a lot of respect for and I'm a fan of knows who I am. That's like when it like obviously guys that train in the same gym know who you are, so that's not surprising. Like, so like I'm not starstruck by Sean Strickland because I see him every day and he knows who I am because of that. But like a good one was a couple of fights ago, me and Bobby Green were on the same card, and I walked in to sign autographs. I was like, that's fucking Bobby, and then I was like, hey man, how's it going? And he's all like, and then he started talking to me, and he's talking about how he's a fan of mine, and he's all like, real, recognize real, and like we started talking. And I was like, damn, he knows who I am. Like, so that was cool. Like, I mean, we have the same manager as well, but like just to see someone that you're a fan of and you respect and they know who you are because of your fights, that's what gets me now. It's not just seeing these guys, but having them know who I am.
And your manager, one of the greatest mixed martial arts managers on the planet, Mr. Jason House. There's a big one of those. He is. He really helped me with my podcasting career by giving me access to all of his fighters, and just what a great guy.
Yes.
Have you seen those sick tattoos that he's got now?
Oh yeah,
you got any tattoos?
Yeah, no, I just have one on my leg.
Yeah,
yeah. He just got all his chest piece done. Man, it looks amazing.
Yeah,
and that's like one of those things too. It's like you have to get a guy who's going to do it right. Like because like some guys, like you can never go cheap on tattoos. If you're going to get a tattoo that you want to have for the rest of your life, you got to put the money into it. And you can see that. And I know the guy that does Jason is a guy who is really well respected.
Here in Vegas, is it?
I think he's from California, but I think the guy comes out or Jason goes over there. But the guy's one of those guys who's like completely booked up. Like you'll never if you're a normal guy, you'll never see that guy kind of thing. Yeah. And so the guy's work is really incredible. And so like if you're gonna do it, you got to do it right. And Jason has done it right.
It's funny, I've been pretty much tattooed for the last. When I first started getting tattoos, which was 30 years ago, they weren't like they are now, and they're so realistic. But I mean, mine kind of look like prison tattoos now. They looked cool back in the day. They're getting a bit old now. So talking about emotion, and this is like I like to kind of ask questions that as a fan, I like to ask questions that fans would normally ask, which I got a bunch that a few fans sent in that I'm going to ask you. But can you talk about like when someone loses a football game, the players don't seem to have that downset of depression and hurt and pain as fighters do from winning a fight. Can you kind of break down why is the emotion so different when you lose compared to other sports?
Well, because everything kind of falls on your shoulders, right? And you feel like you're letting a lot of people down. Like if you have a bad night and you're on a team, there's guys that can carry the team, right? So like you can still have a bad night and your team can win, right? You can you can literally drop the ball and just get benched and your team can still go out there and win, right? Right. Like for us, like it doesn't matter how good you are, it doesn't matter how much you've trained, it doesn't matter what's going on. You can still go out there and lose to a guy that you should beat. You know, Izzy and Sean Strickland, right? Like, Izzy's been such a dominant champion, and then like Sean goes out there and beats him. So like anybody can win on any given night, regardless of the circumstances. And so like I think it's really just up to you. It's an individual sport in the sense of like going out there and just executing that night. Yeah. I mean, we fight. We train with teams, you train with coaches, but when it boils down to it, you got to go out there and you got to fucking do it. And so. I think that's what really weighs on a lot of the fighters' shoulders versus like, if you're a team sport, and so, and I think that might work for like any individual sport, versus a team sport. For me, over the years, I've learned to not get too high or too low about losses or wins, because if you win and you get too high about it, it's just going to be that much more of a decline if you lose your fight, the next fight. If you lose your fight and you get too low about it, you might not feel like you have the ability to bounce back from it as well. So like, I mean, even losing a fight in the UFC, like it hangs on me for.
Is it embarrassed? Do you get embarrassed at all?
It's not necessarily an embarrassing thing. It's more of just like a disappointment. Yeah. And initially when I first started fighting, it was embarrassment. It was like you don't want to get embarrassed. You don't want to lose a fist fight in front of a bunch of people. And so you want to go out there and be able to win. And even if you lose, you want to lose in a fashion where it's not embarrassing. Like you don't want to get knocked out, you don't want to get choked out. You want to go out there and put up a good fight, win, lose, or draw. Yeah. And so that's really what drives me the most. Not to win or lose, but just to go perform, because like. You can't control the judges and stuff as well. So like you can go out there and win a fight and then still lose on the judges' scorecards because they don't know what they're fucking doing half the time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, like I said, I think over the years, it's just don't get too high or too low about things. Sulk in it for in the losses or even the wins for. I would say maximum 3 to 6 days, and then just move on. Get back in the gym. I mean, Sean said it. He's like, even right when he was doing the post-fight conference or the interviews, and he was just sitting there. He's like, I don't even think about this anymore. I'm over it. This is past. Like, let's fucking move on. I'm gonna go train on Monday. I'm gonna go train next week and get back at it. Like, this doesn't fucking mean anything to me. Like, and that's how. I mean, that's a little bit more dramatic, but that's kind of how you gotta be. You gotta be like, win, lose, or draw. Just sulk it. You'll have your your 48 hours of enjoyment or your 48 hours of depression or whatever it is, but don't lay in it too long.
Yeah.
And don't get too high about it or don't get too low about it and just move on.
See, this is what I get fascinated by a fighter's mindset. Obviously I like what they do physically. I love what they do physically, and I love what they do in the octagon. They're one percenters. There's not a lot of people that can do it. That's why all of us people in the world are glued to the biggest sports entertainment company, the UFC. The mindset is what intrigues me, because you just heard what Julian just said. You can never get too high or get too low. You've just got to move on with it. Now, that's something that you should probably take in your normal life. You know what I mean? Never get too excited by something where you're going to blow your load and push it out of context, and never get too depressed over something when it doesn't go your way. So that's a great way of putting it. Speaking of emotion, have you ever cried when you've lost?
Not necessarily.
In the shower?
No, well, I mean, when you get done fighting, it's one of those things that like I don't necessarily have that type of emotion. Like I'm not sad. I'm just like, all I want to do, like literally, even if I win, the first thing I want to do is I want to go train or something. Like it's like you're so high about it, and if you lose, you're so like, you're just disappointed in yourself that you want to go hit the gym. So like you're just like, you almost have a fire lit under your ass, winning or losing.
Yeah.
So it's like you don't have that sad like crying emotion. I don't personally have that, but after a couple of days, if you lost a fight, there's times where you want to kind of let those emotions out. But I'm not a very emotional guy in that sense.
That was going to be my next question. You obviously are pretty non-emotional. You don't cry at movies or
yeah, not really.
Yeah.
I'm pretty even keel, and I'm kind of like Sean in a sense of like that. Like I'm just more of a realist. I think about all the possibilities that can happen before they happen, and just when it happens, it's like, okay, this was one of the possibilities. So let's not and like I said, don't get too high or too low about it. Like, I can go cry and move on still, but I feel like if you just sulk in things too long, it's just like, oh, poor me. Like, fuck that. Like, I feel like in the society that we're living in, it's just it's such a victimhood, and people are becoming more and more victims, and it's like, it's good to be a victim now. It's like, what the fuck? Like, no, right. Fuck that. Like, don't feel sorry for me. Like, who cares? Work harder. Like, like if I go lose a fight, all I want to do is get right back into a fight camp, because I just have a fire under my ass to right that wrong.
Geez, I wish I was more like you. I tend to go, I don't want to say the poor me, even though I've had the last 3 years have probably been the toughest of my whole life as far as loss, injury, financially, career-wise. It's been the worst. So I wish I was more like that, but I am learning to be more like that, because I believe the more heartache and loss that gets thrown at you, you build up this like kind of exoskeleton that shit just kind of starts bouncing off to you after a while. 100%. Your dad died. Yeah, he died. Well, you don't look banged up about it. Well, I can't get upset anymore about things. I've had way too much shit happen to me that you can't get upset. That's one thing that fighters, not only do they have control of what they do, that you got to have control of your emotions. A man or woman that doesn't have control of their own emotions, you got no hope of controlling shit. Do you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It kind of circles back to the first thing you were talking about, of like, fighting with emotion or fighting without emotion. Like, it's you gotta kind of be emotionalist in fighting, and kind of it transitions over into my in my regular life too. You kind of get hardened, because like you're like, well, I gotta just have no emotion. Like I gotta go and train, day in and day out, and just have no emotion, and go fight with no emotion, and just try to be a tactician about it versus fighting off emotion. And then it kind of leaks into my normal life, and obviously with I'm married, me and my wife. And she, if she had it her way, I would have more emotion. But what I do kind of drives that out of me a little bit. Right. And so, not to say I'm perfect by any means, because I'm definitely not. But I do need to work more on
showing more emotion.
Yeah, well, just being in tune with it. Like there's a difference between being emotional and being in tune with your emotions, because I think we should all have our emotions and understand these things. But you see some people fly off the handle because of their emotions, and that's not how it should be. You should be able to, taking a loss, taking a win, lose your dad, and understand these things, and grieve over these things, and do the grieving process, but be able to control those things and be in tune with them.
No kids yet?
My wife's pregnant.
Yo! Congratulations!
She's we just passed the first trimester, which is usually the toughest one. In terms of like miscarriage and like the percentage of those kind of things. So we're kind of past that that phase, and so she's a bit more confident and happy about it because being pregnant, her emotions are going to be high and low.
Maybe you'll learn something there.
Yes. And so all the little things that then wouldn't necessarily seem like a big deal can be a big deal, and so we're past that process where like every little weird feeling she has. She was thinking, oh, is this a miscarriage? Was something going on? Like, oh my gosh, should we go to the doctor? It's like we're past that process, and now we're kind of, it feels like we're smooth sailing a bit now. Yeah. And so due date March 14th.
It's going to be a Pisces.
Yeah. So, and we're looking forward to it. We've been, it's been kind of a long process. We had to do IVF for it, and we had to do a lot of medication on her end, a lot of sticking her with needles, and just at home. It's amazing what they let you do at home, like medication wise. Right. I was shooting progesterone into my wife's butt every single night with a needle like this long.
Were you using a 23 gauge?
I don't even know, because I have no idea. They were long.
And what did they just tell you to quarter the gluten? Yes,
exactly. We had to do.
I've never taken steroids before. What are you talking about?
That's what it felt like. That's what it felt like I was doing to her. I was like, man, this is what it must feel like for guys when they're giving steroids to their buddies or whatever. And every single night for 70 nights, I had to do this long needle into her butt, and we had to go back and forth to each butt cheek. That way, it wasn't like too much pressure on either side. But yeah, she had to go through a lot, and finally here now, and passed the first trimester. So
God is good, brother.
Yes, it
Congratulations,
is.
man.
I
would have liked to have seen your. I would have liked to have seen a video of you on injection number 1 to injection number 7. Yeah. Injection number 1 would have been, and she would have been saying, just push the injection number 7 straight away, right?
Well, we had to do it like it was always at a certain time. We had to do it between 6 and 8 at night, usually about 7 o'clock at night. And the first couple of weeks doing it, I'm like making sure I'm doing everything right. And then after I got comfortable with it, I was like, man, I'd be drinking beers, and they'd be like, oh, I forgot, I got to shoot you up tonight. And I had to do it no problem, became a professional at it,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's practice makes perfect, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So what I like to do is, I'm just going to find these. I get some of the fans to send me some questions. And basically what I'm going to do, guys, in the future is that I'm going to be doing fan questions, and I'm going to read them, what you send me to my Instagram. But also I'm going to do a fan Zoom day where you can Zoom in on this podcast and be a special guest host, interviewing, talking, and asking questions of some of the top athletes in the world, from the UFC, Cage Warriors, Bellator, etc., etc. I'm going to be putting a little bit more information on that in the future. So if you want to be a guest host with me, either in studio or via Zoom, that's coming up in the future. All right, so I don't know if I can read all of these out, because some of them are a little perverted, but
that's fine.
Just do your best, okay? We've got 10 questions here, and they're pretty easy. Let's see where we can get. Okay, question number 1. If you were a superhero, what would your special move be in the octagon?
Oh man, if I was a superhero and I had the ability to have a special move, I don't know if it's necessarily a move, but I would be able to slow everything down, like slow motion for everybody else, but me not having slow motion, so I could do whatever the hell I wanted. I could stop everything or slow them down and really make it look easy.
Great one. Mine was I wanted to be able to have X-ray vision so I could look into the audience and. Okay, question number 2. What's the most embarrassing moment that you've ever had during a fight?
Well, I've never pooped my pants, so that's good.
That happens though, right?
Yeah, it happens a lot.
Does it really?
I've seen there's a compilation of it. There's a compilation like top 10 dudes who poop their pants in fights, and so as long as that hasn't happened, then I'm okay.
Well, you better get used to that, because you're going to be dealing with a lot of poop for the next 2 years when this baby comes along, my brother.
100%. I would say not necessarily embarrassing, but it was kind of a weird situation. I fought a kid named Ryan Mulvihill 3 times, and twice when I fought him, and only when I fought him, never when I trained or anything else. Not my big toe, but the toe next to it got dislocated in the fight, both times. And on the first 2 times that I fought him, and never happened fighting anybody else, never in training, never nothing.
Is it longer than your big toe?
Yes, and that's what it was. And I was defending the takedown so much that my toe was getting pushed on the mat, and it clicked and like got dislocated right in the middle. And
does that hurt while you're fighting?
No, I had no idea. It happened. So it happened. He ended up taking me down. I looked at my toe and I could see it. It was all cockeyed, and I was like, holy shit, like it started making me think some weird stuff in the fight. I'm like, well, shit, my toes fucked. Like, and then I ended up reaching down, I clicked it back in. I was like, all right, it's fine. So
And
let's
that didn't
keep fighting.
hurt?
No, you
just gave me shivers when you said that.
Afterwards, it hurt. Like obviously when all the adrenaline kind of cools down and stuff. But the only time it ever happened in my life was 2 times fighting him specifically.
Wow.
So shout out to him. Shout out
Fucking
to
hell.
Ryan
Here's a real good one, and this has happened to me and my wife before. Have you ever had a dream about fighting your opponent and woke up throwing punches?
Oh yeah, I've had a bunch of dreams like that, and I've accidentally hit my wife.
Have you accidentally hit your wife?
I've accidentally hit my wife. So if I'm ever getting an argument with my wife, I'll wait till she's asleep. I smack her, and then I act like I woke up. I'm like, oh, my bad, babe. No,
That's great.
But seriously, I've done it. I've done it like once or twice where I've hit her. Nothing substantial, obviously, but yeah.
That's funny. That's awesome. This is pretty obvious. What's the strangest thing you've seen happen during a weigh-in? Like the official ones when people are cutting weight. Anything like apart from the normal fainting and shit?
I've seen obviously that's more of a normal thing, really. I mean, that's not even a strange thing, like seeing guys kind of fall over or have to sit down because they're lightheaded. I think, most of like the weirdest like things I've seen, it hasn't been when I've been at weigh-ins. I've seen like, people, one of the weirdest ones, well, not weirdest, but one of the most aggressive things was when Jeremy Stevens pushed.
And threw his neck out.
Yes, I can't remember what his name is. Man,
and he had to cancel the fight.
Yes. So that was disconcerting in the sense of like one of my biggest things is like I don't like it when people get aggressive in non-aggressive situations, and like we're gonna be fighting tomorrow anyways. Like we just made weight. Like this should be a chill, a pretty chill situation. Like we're gonna face off. Okay, I know the emotions get high, but you don't need to try to hurt somebody like indefinitely.
Jeremy Stevens, for those of you guys that don't know what it is, Jeremy Stevens, aka who the fuck is that guy? Little heathen. Little heathen. All right. So, if you had to fight with one hand tied behind your back, which hand would you choose?
I would tie my right hand behind my back. Just because I'm orthodox, so I use my left hand a bit more. Obviously, my power hand's my rear hand, but I use my left. I feel like everybody uses their jabbing hand probably about 70 to 80% of their strikes. So,
geez, these fans have got some good questions here. If you could switch places with any celebrity for one day, who would it be?
Dang, it'd probably be just like a fighter. I'd probably just I'd probably pick like a guy like Sean Strickland. Like honestly, like
see, Sean. Look, Julian Erosa here said that he wants to be a Sean Strickland impersonator. He would be you for one day.
Let's go.
That's fucking awesome. I like that. That's the standard one. I'm not going to ask that one. What made you decide to pursue a career in mixed martial arts? Because you can't sing or dance, right?
Yeah, exactly. I just like getting punched in the face.
How do you handle? We already asked that. Yeah, these are just generalized questions. How do you analyze your opponents before you fight, and what factors do you consider? Do you watch them on YouTube? Do you sit down with your coaches and pause it and slow it down and say, okay, when he does this, and this is when we're going to count? Is that something that happens?
I think a lot of guys really rely on their coaches for that, and you need to. I think your coach's job is to analyze your opponent and really break those things down and work on those things in training. I know a lot of guys don't like to watch their opponents film because they almost put them on a pedestal. Like, oh, that he's doing this really well. Or what if he catches me with this or with that? And so, for me, I don't mind. I like to watch them, but you got to really rely on your coaches.
Okay, last question. Any advice for upcoming aspiring fighters that want to be in the UFC?
I mean, just put the work in, really. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. And don't expect that. Don't expect anything, especially to be in the UFC. Don't expect that, because if you're expecting that, you're going to give your hopes up. I can't even imagine what the percentage is. Probably so small of fighters that strive to be in the UFC that'll never get there. I mean, it's insane. I mean, the UFC has like 600, 700 athletes.
Is that how many there is on the roster now?
Yeah, I think there's like 600 to 700 athletes. And I can't imagine how many hundreds of thousands of fighters are out there trying to make it to the UFC, and then how many hundreds of thousands of fighters that don't make it to the UFC. And so don't expect anything. Just work hard. Train day in and day out. Don't make excuses. Just put the work in. And if you do that, and if you just believe in yourself, you'll eventually get to where you want to be.
Yeah, so it's about mindset, right? Mindset.
100%.
How huge is mindset as a fighter?
Fighting is 99, or I want to say 99%. I would say probably about 90% mental. Because, you see these things, right? Like, and I hate to always go back to the same example, but it's so, so recent, is the Sean Strickland versus Adesanya. You had a guy in there in Sean that looked like he was mentally thinking he was going to win that fight. And you had Adesanya in there that looked like he was mentally not going to win that fight. And what I base that on too is, like, Adesanya knows he's down going into the fourth, into the fifth round. You're down 3 rounds, you're down, you're going to lose this fight regardless. Like, so why not, like, just say, fuck it, let's just go for it. Like, and when you see someone that doesn't go for it in those times where they should just go for it because there's nothing to lose, then, like, that they're not there mentally, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and just go for it. And and if you're not going to do that, you must not be there or in the right mindset for it. And so for me, like, you always got to, and the mental, like, can really, I mean, you can beat yourself before you get into the fight.
Yeah.
Mentally, you can be like, oh my God. And that's why that kind of brings me back to people not wanting to watch their opponents on tape, because they put them on a pedestal. Like, oh my God, that guy's such a good kicker. What if he kicks me? What if he knocks me out with a head kick? Or what if he, beats my leg up? And they go in there and they freeze because of these things. And then they get leg kicked, and then they get head kicked and they get knocked out. But if you're able to mentally focus on your abilities and not do that to yourself, then you can win fights mentally like that.
Have you ever punched yourself while fighting?
Not necessarily fighting, but like doing Dutch drills with buddies, like, uppercutting, like uppercutting. I've accidentally like missed the pad and hit me and myself in the face a couple times.
Yeah. So what's your advice for a 53-year-old man that was trying to box it, but ruptured his Achilles tendon?
Well, first you got to be healthy. That's number one thing, right? You got to get healthy. Like you can't do anything with.
No, that's it. I'm done. I'm a good 6 months out now.
Yeah, and that's like I think that's one of the hardest ones to really come back from is the Achilles. I have no idea. I've never had to deal with it, but people say,
it's painful, and you have
Jamal
to walk.
Hill, he
just did it, right?
Yes, he did the same thing.
I've got to talk to Jamal and get a little bit of advice from him.
See what he's doing. I don't know. Did you have surgery on it?
They told me that I'm going to need. You can either go 2 ways. You can have surgery, or you can put it in a cast, and it can heal that way.
Okay.
So I'm still in the decision. Like, do I want to go the surgery? Like, I had the cast. Believe it or not, I actually took my own cast off yesterday because I got it wet in the shower.
Yeah.
And it fucked it up. So I took it off and I put the boot back on. I'm just gonna wait and see. I've had so many surgeries over the last 3 years. I broke my neck and had neck surgery, and I had bowel surgery and all this kind of shit. So surgery is the last thing that I want to do. But going forward, we'll see that. Hey, when we're coming to the end, I'm going to play that. We'll play my intro out at the end as well. You don't have to cut that out of the podcast. We can just keep it in and keep it real. Just play it at the end as well. Yeah, man. So why did you decide to come on this podcast today? Is it because we've spoke before? Is there a reason why you were like, yeah, I'm going to come on?
Oh, I actually really enjoy sitting down and talking with people about things because it kind of reminds me certain things that I forget. Even something as simple as you asking me the advice I would give someone up and coming. Like, it reminds me of like when I was up and coming and where I was thinking fighting was going to take me, and kind of reminds me of where I came from, and sometimes you forget these things, and so it's always nice to reiterate these things that are important to you as a fighter and refocus those things.
Yeah, I went back and looked at our interview, and I had a couple of guests that I could have had on this week, but I wanted to have you because our conversation last time was really flowy, and I remember giving you a little insight on what I thought your fight was, and I was getting so excited when I was explaining it, and I thought, I've just got to have this guy on again. So first of all, I appreciate you coming on because, for podcasters like me, there's a million of us, and we just want to get great content with great guests, and you've definitely been one of them today. Julian, just before we finish up here, what's your message, man? What's your message to the world? I know that's a hard question. Do you have a message or do you have a mantra, or do you have something that you go by? What's your message, bro?
My message is, it's funny. I was talking to Puna, who fights in the UFC, and he trains extreme.
I love him. He's been on the podcast.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a big teddy bear. But I was telling him today, and this is not really a mantra or anything, but I was thinking about it, and every day you wake up and you sometimes you don't want to do what you got to do that day. And one thing that I do a lot is I like to go run. And there's a run that I do. It's like almost 15 miles, and it really sucks.
Wow.
But it's one of those things where like you don't want to. you just don't want to do it so badly that it makes you kind of want to do it. So I made a saying because of that was, have you ever wanted to do something so badly because you didn't want to do it so badly? So like what that really means is like there's so many times I wake up to go that run or to go train. I'm just like, man, I don't want to do it. Like I'm just tired. I'm beat up. And that's the reason why I want to do it so badly is because I'm beat up, because because I don't want to do it. So I want to do it so badly because I don't want to do it so badly.
Yeah.
And so it kind of just.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah. It kind of just turns the perspective around. Like instead of like kind of like feeling sorry for yourself, fuck it, just go fucking work hard. Like, and if you really want to be somewhere, you want to do something, like, just go fucking do it. Like, I've never been a man of like inspirational words or anything. I feel like I'm kind of like Sean Strickland in a sense. It's like, just I don't know, just go grab your gloves and go spar somebody, go fight, you know, like don't feel sorry for yourself. And I feel like in the world that we're living in, you know, to touch back on it is like, I feel like we become more and more of like highlighting victims. Like don't and I feel like fighting is the opposite of that. Like you can't be a victim as a fighter. You have to just step up and fucking work your ass off and get beat up sometimes and bounce back from that. And you have to be okay with these things. So many people out there just want to be a victim, and they just like, you know, they sulk and they almost like there's like a victimhood celebrity thing going on. Like, I'm so sorry for you, like because of this and this and this. It's like, no, we should not be. We should be building people up that are doing good things and not celebritizing people that are going through troubles, you know?
Yeah. There you go. That's it. If you don't want to do something, just break that little spell and just go and do it, and then you'll feel better after you've done it. Hey, like one of my Cutman friends says to me, no sad stories, Marcus, just proper ones. No sad stories anymore. Well, that was great. Let me just... Guys, the podcast is back up and running again. If you want to display your logo, do you want to display your product or anything in this fantastic studio that we've got here? We're taking on sponsorship now. Just hit me up in a DM in my Instagram. Celsius, sparkling mango passion fruit energy drink. The crisp taste. When it hits your lips, it's just so good. I am not sponsored by these guys yet. So, Celsius energy drinks, they're great. Julian.
I'll do one.
I'll do one. Old school.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
Yeah, it's a good one.
You got a fucking dart in your neck, man. You better pull that out. Julian, bro, thanks so much for coming on, buddy. And I'd love to get you back on in the future. And I'm so happy for you that you're having a baby. You're in the UFC. You've got a wife. What a fucking life you have, my friend.
Living the dream, brother. Living the dream. Yes.
Guys, once again, thanks very much for tuning in. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. You are watching UFC Featherweight Julian Erosa here on the Marcus Deegan Show. My brother.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, mate. I really appreciate it. Guys, we'll see you next time. Let's go! The Marcus Deegan Show.